Hello friends, my name is Deepak and I'm with Tax Code Advisors, and today I'm going to talk to you about LLCs, limited liability companies, especially those of you guys who have real estate assets for investment purposes. So I think for most of us, we understand that it's a good idea to put your investment assets into a separate LLC. What that allows you to do is shield your personal assets from liabilities that arise from within that particular LLC. And I think most of us understand that. And if you have a question, I'll be happy to connect with you and kind of explain to you in more details. But in my practice, I see three major problems with LLCs. Number one, a lot of time I will have people walk in with just a piece of paper. And sometime for that piece of paper, they might have spent $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, and they think that's a great LLC. Okay, too simple, basically. And LLCs are not that simple. You do need to understand a lot of things and how those things impact you. Because if they were that simple, then there will be no need for us to go to attorneys and accountants and understand, how things work behind the curtain. So too simple. Now, just because it's simple doesn't mean that people don't pay a lot of money for it. Sometimes I'll see people pay, $2,000, $5,000 for a simple LLC, which is too expensive, in my opinion. Second problem I see is sometimes people make their LLC structure way too complicated. They would have like a holding company. Within the holding company, they will have some sort of trust. Then they will have another LLC in a different state. Then sometimes they have another trust in a different state. And it's just too much stuff going on. And you're getting, very little value out of it, if any, whatsoever. And people end up spending a lot of money for that because I think that kind of complicated structure, most people can't do it themselves. So they go to people who sell these kind of packages. And they're expensive. Sometimes they'll be $5,000, $10,000, $15,000. Now, for such a complicated package, I can understand if somebody charges large amount of money for it. But the question is, do you really even need that? Did the client really understood what they were really buying? I think that's somewhat of a questionable theory there. So that's my second problem. And third problem is just purely pricing. Like I said, sometimes I see people selling a piece of paper that's not even worth, a couple $100 for thousands of dollars. And then sometimes I see people selling really complicated structure for, $10, $15, $20,000. So pricing is another issue. We are business owners. I mean, I own real estate. Many of my clients own real estate. It needs to be simple enough, but it should also provide us good protection. It should also provide us good tax saving strategies. It should be easy to operate. And most importantly, you as the owner of that LLC should be able to understand it, right? If you don't understand, why are you paying so much money, then that's a problem. Now, why do people fall for these traps? Well, people fall for these traps because of two reasons. Obviously, either it's greed or fear. Sometimes I see clients feel like, oh my God, this guy can do the LLC for $500, must be good. It's really cheap. But then they don't really understand what they're really getting for $500. And I'm going to go over some of those details so you can have a better understanding behind that. And sometimes it's just a fear. Somebody might say, oh my God, somebody can attack you this way, you can be sued this way, you can run into problem this way. And you go like, oh my God, there's so many problems. What do I do? And they say, well, we have a solution. We're going to sell you this $5,000, $10,000 package, and that can solve all of your problems. Once again, not true. Everything has its own sets of limitations. My approach, as many of you guys know, is to educate. That's what I do. If you want to set up LLCs for really cheap, I'll show you how to do it. No problem. If you need to do it the right way, I'll show you how to do it. I'll explain to you what are the advantages and disadvantages of doing things a certain way. I think if you understand that, you'll be able to make a better judgment as to which way you should set up your LLC. So I'm going to talk about some of the things that you should pay attention to. So let's say you're setting up an LLC. Well, first decision you're probably going to make is, should it be a member managed LLC or a manager managed LLC? You need to understand that. What are the limitations? What are the advantages? What are the disadvantages? Who is going to operate that LLC? Who is going to make the decisions? Do you have partners in that LLC? Would you be raising funds? Would you be financing that LLC? Would you be taking a mortgage on that property? How often are you going to refinance it? What kind of business are you in? What kind of other liabilities do you have? All those things needs to be talked about. You can't just go online and say, look, I want an LLC. Not good enough. You need to take a look at overall picture. Where does that LLC fit in with your overall asset protection, your overall business and whatnot? Then and I'm talking about this bare bone LLC. I'm not even talking about anything fancy just yet. But guess what? A lot of people are not going to ask you those questions. And because they don't ask you those questions, they don't know. And if they do ask you those questions, those consultations can be very expensive. Okay. Now, let's say you did set up an LLC. Now what? Well, that LLC is no good unless you transfer that property into that LLC. So many times I'll see clients walk in, they got an LLC done for cheap, sometimes, $400 or $500, and now they want to do a deed transfer. That's another $1,000. So now, they only got a piece of paper, and now they're paying a lot of money to transfer their property into it. Sometimes people have multiple properties. Well, you need to understand, how can you transfer that deed as, for as little as possible. Important. Only then you have something, because if you have an LLC but you didn't really transfer any property into it, then that LLC is doing you no good, right? So that's another thing to keep in mind. Then we have the operating agreement. Majority of people who have already established an LLC, who walks into my office, don't have an operating agreement. Now, technically speaking, your CPA, your accountant, whoever you're working with, they don't care. They don't need to really see the operating agreement. But for you, if you want to really treat this LLC as a separate entity, operating agreement is extremely important. What clauses are in there? What clauses should not be in there, right? Who are the partners? How are they going to pay, fund the LLC? What if you need more funds? How will the distribution happen? How will the equity be managed? All kind of issues needs to be dealt with in an operating agreement. So if you're just randomly picking one off the shelf, maybe some sort of template, or maybe going on somewhere online, you have no clue what clauses should be there or what shouldn't be there. So does it make sense to get a qualified attorney involved to do it? Now, let's just say if you do get qualified attorney involved, you shouldn't be really spending thousands of dollars on it. Like, it needs to be reasonable, right? Okay. Now, let's just say we pass that hurdle. Now, you do have a good operating agreement. Then most of the people don't really keep track of their meeting minutes. In matter of fact, sometimes people even argue, well, it's an LLC, I don't need to give a meeting minute. Stuff like that. Well, if you have a separate entity, and if that entity is ever questioned, then your meeting minutes will be your savior. You'll be able to show how this entity is different than you, because each decision you took was documented as part of meeting minutes. Extremely important. Then there are tax strategies. For example, maybe you travel, maybe you have a board meetings, maybe you meet with your advisors, with your consultants. All of that can be an expense to your LLC, but it will only happen if your operating agreement also have proper board of advisors. Important, right? Which state are you going to set up your LLC in? So you will see people in two camps. One camp will be saying something like that, well, set up an LLC in the state you live in. Then there will be people who say, well, no, you should really set up an LLC in the state you're doing business in. Like, that means that's where you have your property. And then some will say, well, actually, that's not good enough. You also need to have another LLC somewhere in Delaware, Nevada, or Wyoming. Critical question. Each one of them have their advantages and disadvantages. Once again, it's your LLC, so you should understand it. Okay? Once you have all that figured out, then you still have more things to do. For example, who will be the registered agent? Do you really want to receive mail at your home, or can you even receive a mail at your home? Maybe you live in California, maybe the property is in Texas. That means you need somebody in Texas to be able to accept the mail on your behalf, right? Are you going to be using a property management company to use it? And another critical one, many times I see people spend, you know, 1 month rent, 2 months rent to find tenants, and then they're spending $300-400 a month to property management company. Well, can that be done at a cost-effective price? Of course it can. I mean, obviously, I'm making this video to tell you that yes, you can get a quality work done without breaking the bank. That's the whole point. I just want to point out the obvious that there's just so many things. Like anybody can go make a video and show you how they can give you a good product because you don't know what good product looks like. You don't know what are all the requirements is. You don't know what questions to ask, right? That's the biggest problem. Let's say it's a property management. Now you need to receive a mail. Who will receive a mail? If you have 10 properties, do you really need 10 bank accounts, or can you survive with one? Or do you even need a bank account? What about compliance? Who will be responsible for filing all the renewal paperwork, for doing your meeting minutes? BOI report, that is a new requirement starting this year. Who is responsible for doing that? Have you already done it? Or can that be outsourced for, once again, for little cost? How does this play into your trust if you already have an estate? How do you transfer that property in there? And, what do you do with it? You need to understand that. Then there's another set of questions. Sometimes I see clients, well, I just can't afford to spend a couple $1,000 to set up an estate. Well, if you don't want to do that, well, you can always create a trust yourself. I can show you how to do it. So just let me know and I'll show you where to go, what to do, and you can do it yourself. If you don't want to get an attorney involved and don't want to spend a lot of money, that's okay. But not having a trust is not a good solution. You should still have it. So you need to understand how that overall plugs into it. Then you got insurance questions. How does the insurance kind of plays into it? So this kind of gives you an idea as to what are a lot of moving elements as part of an LLC. Okay. No matter which company you go to, they will probably deal with some parts of it. Somebody might say, oh, yeah, I can help you with D-transfer for this price. Somebody might say, well, I can set up the LLC for this price. Somebody might say, I'll do an operating agreement for this site. I will be your registered agent, or I will provide you the mailbox service. I will provide you the compliance service. I'll provide you the property management service. Yeah, you can do that. You can go to 10 different people, but then again, you're going to pay the 10x the price because each person needs to make a profit off it. Now, because I help so many clients to do this, I have come up with my own system. So what I recommend my clients is before you do anything, set up an hour consultation and I'll break everything down for you. What are the different pieces of puzzle, how they come together, and how you can achieve pretty much everything I discuss at the least price possible. So even if you go to any company, at least you will know what questions to ask. You will know exactly whether they are full of what, or they are legit and they're providing the right service. So that's all I want to tell you about LLC at this point. Obviously, we can dig deeper into all kind of aspects. We can talk about, D-transfer. We can talk about operating agreements. We can talk about how to do meeting minutes, board of advisors, tax strategies, all that kind of stuff. But that will just simply make the video way too long. And more importantly, and honestly, it will probably just confuse you. So my recommendation is, please set up a consultation and let's break it down and let's take a look at how you can achieve what you want to achieve at the least possible price. All right. So thank you so much, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.